Hey everyone, welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled to be your dedicated partner today on your journey to passing the CMA exam. We're opening up a massive and honestly incredibly fascinating topic from the governance, risk, and compliance section of your syllabus. We're talking about corporate governance. Now, I know that term can sometimes sound a little, well, dry. You might picture a list of boring rules that corporate lawyers argue about in some stuffy boardroom. But in reality, it's a high stakes power struggle. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how this power is checked, balanced, and tested. My goal is to give you the absolute clarity you need to completely crush these concepts on test day. So, to keep our study session focused, here's our roadmap. We'll hit 1, the big picture, 2, the 4 pillars, 3, the governance players, 4, keyboard committees, 5, exam practice, and then we'll finish with a quick 6, wrap up. All right, let's dive right into section 1, the big picture, balancing interests. Before we get too deep into the weeds of the syllabus, we really need to demystify what governance actually is. Just look at the sheer number of different groups involved here. It's kind of like a giant puzzle. Corporate governance is essentially the master system of rules, practices, and processes that direct and control a company. Think about it this way. Who actually owns a publicly traded company? Well, the shareholders do, right? But they aren't the ones sitting in the office every single day running things. So who makes sure the executives don't just take the shareholders' hard-earned cash, buy a fleet of private yachts, and sail away into the sunset? That is exactly what corporate governance is designed to prevent. The absolutely crucial point here is that this master system is a massive balancing act. It has to harmonize the competing interests of literally everyone involved, from the management team running the show all the way to the community where the business actually operates. It's the glue that keeps the whole corporate machine standing tall. Moving on to Section 2, the 4 Pillars Framework Foundation. For your CMA exam, you absolutely must understand that robust corporate governance rests on 4 non-negotiable pillars. If one fails, the whole structure gets shaky. Let's walk through them. First up, we've got accountability. This is all about establishing crystal clear roles and making sure individuals are actually held responsible for their actions. You simply can't govern if nobody is accountable. Next is transparency. This means providing timely, accurate disclosure on all material matters, whether that's financial performance, the ownership structure, or governance practices themselves. There's no hiding the ugly numbers in the dark. Third is compliance. Very straightforward. This is just ensuring the organization follows all the applicable laws, regulations, and industry standards. And finally, risk management. This pillar is all about identifying, assessing, and managing risks to safeguard the organization's assets and its future. Here's a golden nugget for your exam prep. When corporate governance fails in the real world and in your exam scenarios, it is almost always because one of these 4 pillars was deliberately ignored or systematically weakened. Okay, Section 3, the governance players, the flow of power. To truly understand how governance works in practice, we need to meet the main characters on the corporate stage. This hierarchy brilliantly illustrates the flow of power in a modern corporation. Up at the very top, you have the shareholders. They are the actual owners of the company. But as we just talked about, they don't run the daily operations. Instead, they use their voting power to elect the board of directors. So the board acts as their elected representatives. Then, the board turns around and hires the executive management, folks like the CEO and the CFO, to be the day-to-day operators. So power flows from the owners, down to the board, and finally to the executives. But here's the catch. Anytime you separate ownership from daily control, you create a very specific, very predictable type of friction. And that friction leads us directly to this vital definition, the principal-agent problem, which is also known as agency theory. This is the classic economic dilemma that the CMA examiners absolutely love to test. It happens when a representative, the agent, has goals that conflict with the owner, the principal. I really want you to star, highlight, and circle this concept in your study notes because it is foundational for the exam. Let's visually contrast this friction so it really sticks. On one side, we have the principal, or shareholders. What do they want? Well, they want the company's value to grow steadily over the long term. They want sustainable wealth. On the other side, we have the agent, our managers. Now, managers are human, right? They might be tempted to prioritize their own short-term bonuses, try to boost their industry prestige, or honestly just protect their own job security. They might be tempted to make a super risky decision today that triggers a massive bonus for themselves this year, even if it totally wrecks the company 5 years down the line. That misalignment, that is the heart of the principal-agent problem. Let's look at Section 4, Key Board Committees, Oversight, and Checks. So how do we solve this massive conflict of interest? Well, I want you to treat this as your high-value cheat sheet for the exam. You really need to memorize this mapping. First, we have the Audit Committee.
Their main responsibility is overseeing financial reporting and internal controls. And your CMA focus here, this committee must be 100% independent. It has to be made up of outside directors with zero employee ties. Next is the Compensation Committee. They design the executive pay packages. The goal here is to link management incentives with long-term shareholder wealth, preventing that short-term manipulation we just talked about. Finally, the Nominating or Governance Committee. They recruit new board members and shape government's policies, ensuring the board maintains diversity, independence, and total objectivity.
Which brings us to a massive exam tip. The concept of independence is tested heavily on the CMA. If an exam scenario describes a company where, say, the CEO is also the chairman of the board and the audit committee is made up of the CFO and the VP of sales, major red flags should be flying in your mind. Executive employees simply cannot objectively police themselves. For governance to actually work, committees like audit and compensation absolutely must be populated by independent, non-executive directors. All right, time for Section 5, Exam Practice. Test your knowledge.
I want to put my coach's hat on here and deconstruct a simulated multiple choice question together, exactly like the ones you're going to see on test day. Let's read through it. To minimize agency conflicts, a publicly traded company's audit committee should ideally consist of, we have 4 options. A mix of shareholders, execs, and internal auditors. B, only independent, financially literate directors. C, the CFO, chief internal auditor, and external auditor. Or D, board members who are also major suppliers. Okay, take a second and think about the rules of independence we just covered. Let's methodically cross off the wrong answers and explain the underlying why for each, because that's how we learn. Option A, totally wrong. Having executive management on the audit committee destroys independence, because they'd literally be reviewing their own work. Option C is wrong because the CFO and chief internal auditor are employees. They work with the audit committee, sure, but they absolutely cannot sit on it. Option D is wrong because it introduces a massive conflict of interest. Major suppliers have their own separate business agendas they want to push, and that leaves us with our easy points winner. Option B is correct. Independent, non-employee directors have no data-little ties to management, and that gives them the pure objectivity required to protect the shareholders. Let's bring it all home with Section 6, Wrap Up Key Takeaways. Fantastic job working through that logic with me. I really commend your hard work and focus today. Before you close your books, here are the 3 critical takeaways I want you to review in your study notes for the next 15 minutes to keep this momentum going. First, remember that corporate governance is the master system of checks and balances protecting all stakeholders. Second, agency theory is all about solving that natural friction by aligning the goals of the agents, our management, with the principals, our shareholders. And third, board independence is non-negotiable. Key committees must be independent to actually be effective. I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. We've just spent all this time outlining these perfectly designed, structurally sound governance rules, right? But if these rules are so clearly defined, why do you think massive corporate financial scandals still dominate the news today? It's a pretty fascinating reminder that even the absolute best, most rigorous structures in the world can be tested, and sometimes broken, by human behavior. Keep exploring that tension as you study, keep up this incredible momentum, and I will see you in our next explainer.